Other than the side missions in this game, I also wanted to talk about the alternate costumes in this game. Now, I like most of them, but some of them I thought were just plain trash, and apparently that's what most people thought about the costumes. But there was a good handful of good suits. And there's a total of 19 different costumes. I want to run down which suits I feel like were good, or ones that just looked plain mediocre and I wouldn't try to bother unlocking. The Vigilante suit, not one of my favorites. I wouldn't suggest this suit. Now this one, it's really your choice, but me, I'm not really a fan of the first TASM outfit. This suit is the default. I mean, this is the one I use the most, so I'd suggest that. Now, Superior Spider-Man suit I think is really creative, how they changed the eye tints a little bit. I also love how you get it from the Stanley comic book store from playing that arcade game. And I just want to talk for a minute and say, I absolutely love the idea of having Stanley have his own comic book store. Like, why does no one praise the game for this? Like, that's a brilliant idea. And the fact that they've never used it in any other games after this one, and the fact that there's only been one more game after this. Marvel Spider-Man probably couldn't implement this because of probably time constraints and they wanted it to be different from the other games. But I like how you can actually read actual Spider-Man comics when you grab them from the random parts of the city. I mean, the character models, that's kind of average. We see that in a lot of Spider-Man games. But plus, the arcade machine, when you do, like, practice runs, I feel like that was a really cool attachment, how you can fight enemies, and that's actually how you unlock the suit. That, I thought, was a really, really awesome idea. And the fact how it's not been used in later games, or if they will use it in a later game, that would be really awesome, and I think many other people would like that too. The Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man suit, I think that's a good suit. I'd suggest checking that one out. The Big Time outfit, I'd suggest that's an okay suit. I wouldn't say it's one of the best ones, but I'd say that's one of the better suits in the game. Now, the next one right here, which is the Scarlet Spider. I prefer the other Scarlet Spider over this one, but I'd say this is one of the good suits, not one of the bad ones. I mean, those animations, I will say, they're kind of funny how they do those kind of things. Now, the 2099 Spider-Man suit, I'd say this suit is very detailed well, kind of like how you saw it in Shattered Dimensions and Edge of Time, but it's better than the design we got in Spider-Man PS4. And the next one right here, the Flip Side, kind of a weird looking design, but I'd say this is one of the better suits. I'd suggest checking this one out. The Spider Armor kind of just looks like a sillier version of Big Time, so I'd say it's okay, but it's not one of the worst suits. That one's kind of in the neutral zone. Not the bad ones, but it's an okay design. Okay, now this is probably the worst Spider-Man suit I've ever seen. Hornet, this just looks like a bad version of Star-Lord. This does not look like a Spider-Man suit, so yeah, this is one of the bad ones. Don't check that one out. That one's kind of just trash. I don't understand this one at all. Nor do I even know how to read his name. Rychit or something? Or Ryochit? I don't know how to read his name, but still, that just looks like a gangster version of a Spider-Man costume. Yeah, don't look at that one. Spider Carnage, kind of a creative idea, but final outcome of the idea of the suit, it wasn't the best looking suit, so I wouldn't suggest this one. That's probably one of the little mediocre ones. Spider-Man Noir, I never unlocked this suit. You have to get all the comic books all over the map, but I'd say this is a good suit, very detailed. I mean, all of them are pretty good. And the Iron Spider costume, that one looks pretty well detailed. I mean, maybe not as good as the PS4 version, but I'd say this is one of the better suits in the game. Now, moving on. This one, the comic book Spider-Man suit, or Cosmic. I wouldn't say this is one of the better suits. I mean, some people like it, but I think it's just honestly an okay design of a suit. Now, the black suit, I never unlocked this one either. This is actually a DLC suit you would have to buy. I'm not sure if it's available anymore, but I'd say this is one of the awesome suits. I suggest this is probably like the second best one other than the default costume. And the Electro-proof spider suits, I would suggest this is a pretty good, awesome suit. I mean, he used this when he fought Electro in one of the later comics when he upgraded his suit. So I suggest looking at this one if you haven't seen it yet. And the Ends of the Earth spider suit, this one's kind of bulky looking in my opinion. I mean, some people like this, but in my opinion, I don't really like the suit that much. So from my point, I wouldn't suggest that suit. Now let's cover my favorite part of the game and something that deserves way more praise than it got. The first boss battle of the game is the Shocker. I mean, we all know it's not as good as the Shocker boss battle in Spider-Man PS4, but I feel like this one actually had some pretty creative ideas of how the boss battle kind of works. It kind of starts out with that giant, huge explosion, kind of like in the Spider-Man 2002 game. This one, it's kind of basic. You kind of just hit him, jump away. It has that kind of basic routine, and you have those kind of special abilities. One problem with the fight is how sometimes you can get caught off guard, kind of like that one explosion right there. But in some ways, the fight kind of feels like just fighting a simple thug. That doesn't make it a bad fight, but it's probably considered to be one of the most easiest boss battles. It's not really the hardest, but more of just kind of a repetitive fight between a thug that just won't go down until that health bar goes out. You know what I mean. One of the later boss battles, and I think this is probably a much better boss battle than what we had in the first Amazing Spider-Man game, which was basically just Spidey fighting her and trying to find her as she just hides. In this one, you're inside a museum, except this time she doesn't run away as frequently. I mean, you get a couple of chances to hit her. She does run away eventually, but they made it a little bit harder, so every time you actually try to heal your health, she'll actually just attack you out of nowhere, so you have no choice but to find her. And at the same time, it isn't as hard, but more kind of a unique way of just trying to catch her out of nowhere. Because you can't really just show up right in front of her, but more you just have to catch her on a glimpse. The Kraven boss battle in Central Park, which is probably my second favorite fight in the game. Here you're fighting Kraven basically in the center of Central Park, while Kraven basically throws drugs at you, and you end up hallucinating multiple other Kravens. Kind of like that fight with Vermin in the first game, how basically he can summon more of them, except this time it's more of a hallucination. The main reason Kraven betrays you is because you find out that Kraven was just working with the Kingpin so he can gather information. Now, one creative thing that this fight does is that sooner or later, Kraven will eventually just hop into the trees and you have to find him in there, because if you don't, then he's going to hit you with another drug and you'll start hallucinating twice as many of those Kravens as once, making the fight way more overwhelming, and plus, it can just make the fight plain frustrating. So it's kind of a fight where you have to play smart and end up trying to dodge all those drugs at once, and make sure that you hit Kraven as soon as he gets in the trees. Best way is just to use your spider sense. As soon as you see that red dot, then you know that's Kraven. As soon as you catch him, then there's that whole animation when he basically pulls you out of the tree. And honestly, a drop like that would probably have broken his neck. Like this drop right here, just look at this. That right there would have broken someone's neck. And probably his back as well, but you know, it's a video game, what can you do? But otherwise, this fight, it's a very good challenge, and plus, I feel like this game deserves a lot more praise for these kind of fights. I feel like it was really creative for the time. Now, the Kingpin fight, I feel like the Kingpin design is a lot better in this game than what we had in Spider-Man PS4. He's actually wearing a white suit like in the comics. And I feel like he has the better face design, and the voice, I feel like, matches the character a lot better. Like, if you've watched the 90s animated series, it really fits the Kingpin character very well. And I love how he has that staff right there, how he can shoot a laser out of it, and it kind of launches side to side. That's another useful ability that he has in the comics. I mean, the only ability you really use to stun him is that web impact, where you charge up your webs and you just charge it right at him. I feel like that was a really smart idea for attacking big enemies, kind of like the bigger thugs in the game. But it's odd how people kind of just looked at this game and said that it wasn't very interesting. It had some creative ideas in there, and I don't understand why it's not being admired here. And the fact how you're going to have to fight some extra thugs that come in, the only way you can actually really hurt them is if you shoot them with a couple of webs, and then eventually you can hurt them. But at the same time, it's hard to attack them while the Kingpin is frequently punching you, throwing stuff at you, shooting lasers, charging right at you like a charging rhino. And it's odd how they mention the rhino in the game as like a secret Easter egg of the armor. They basically effed it up in the first game. The Electro fight, which I think probably is the most visually stunning fight in the game. This fight kind of has the same premise of the Shocker fight. It kind of dodges the lasers and web him up until he gets weak enough so you can get a couple of punches on him. But there are moments here and there where he actually like grabs you and throws you up in the air, kind of like this moment you're seeing right here. It kind of goes between the attack and jump away kind of version of combat. It's not super hard to do, but at the same time, there are moments where the laser may catch you out of turn. Like when you're attacking him, most of the time you usually only get like 3 or 4 seconds before that goes off, and you just get blasted into oblivion. You usually get enough time to dodge it, but I think this fight probably has the most visuals, and I think this part of the game I think had the most effort put into it because the lasers and all the attacks, the lightning, it kind of goes without saying that this fight of the game, it was not rushed. It actually had a lot of progress put into it. The Green Goblin boss battle, the first half of it kind of relies on you chasing him through the rooftops while he throws these drones at you. And there are actually some segments where you get to literally smash his face in the side of the buildings, which is a really enjoyable part of the chase. But I'll be frank and say this, the Green Goblin design looks terrible. The original one looked a lot better. I mean, it looks, far away it looks okay, but for the most part, I feel like the design for Green Goblin, I can admit, looks really bad. But otherwise, this fight on the rooftop, it's similar to Spider-Man Friend or Foe, how you're just chasing him across while you throw bombs at him. But at least attacking him when he's on foot is a lot easier than when he's on the glider, because he's frequently just throwing those bombs. And at the same time, half the time, you'll have issues dodging it because they are occasionally, most of the time, pretty much everywhere. And there are some moments where you can lose track where he is, and then he just gets on the glider and blasts off like that, and it's not really easy to catch. And also, I really like how the spider sense kind of shows up out of nowhere. It's a visual, kind of stunning thing. And also, that hit with the glider kind of reminds me of the first Spider-Man movie, how he gets hit from the glider, like from behind, like Spider-Man dodges it. But otherwise, you repeat the segments until Green Goblin is basically defeated. Now, my favorite fight in the game, it's Carnage. Yeah, the final fight is Carnage. Now, that, without saying, how could people hate this game? Like, Carnage has probably the most visually good-looking outfit in the entire game. Like, the design, I feel like it really fits how the comic book looks like. I mean, compared to all the other designs, he's the most comic booky looking villain in the entire game. And of course, it does follow the comics of how to damage Carnage, which is with fire. And the thing is that basically you have to continuously hit him as basically he pulls explosions with all these barrels, and you have to basically just force push him in there with that giant force of webbing. It just hits him like crazy. And the animations of how the attacks go off, I feel like really makes the game shine. And these animations, I think, just look perfect. Like, I don't understand why some of these parts just get plain hate. I mean, you have to grab them and just throw them into the fire. I feel like this game didn't really have an issue when it comes to making boss battles. But at the same time, I mean, if the only issue I had with the game was mainly just the side missions, but otherwise, these boss battles, I think, really shined when it comes to this game. It just looks perfect in my opinion. Like the Carnage fight, it's a lot better than what I remember seeing in Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. So I think this is probably the best Carnage fight I have seen in any Spider-Man game. At least just that's what I've experienced, since I haven't seen that many Carnage fights. I mean, I did hear there was one on the PSP for Friend or Foe. But my final opinion is, I believe it's a good game. In despite of some of the issues people complained about the game having glitches and the graphics were poor, I mean, my opinion is this. The graphics are decent in my opinion. I mean, one, I grew up with PS2 games that had terrible graphics, so this looks amazing compared to what I grew up with. So the modern graphics from how it looks, even though, yeah, this was 5 years ago, I'd say that the graphics do hold up to some standard. I mean, you would have to have some patience to get through this game, because I will say this, the gameplay is a little bit tedious, but does that make it bad? No. I mean, I think the game probably shines the most if you get it on PS4 or Xbox One. That's just my suggestion of what you should get the game on. But overall, the game has a pretty good story. The gameplay, I will say, is decent for the most part. It's not absolutely amazing. There are some great attacks. I mean, compare the gameplay to the first game. I mean, the graphics do look a little bit better in the first one, but overall, I'd say this game does hold up for being a good Spider-Man game. But it's definitely not the best Spider-Man game. But that's just what I think. What do you guys think? Do you agree that this game is good? Let me know in the comments below. And see you guys.